Back on a Sunday night, Peg City Soundoff. We got a special one tonight. It is also May 4th to all the Star Wars fans. May the 4th be with you. Uh, and we have a new sponsor this month. We got Studio 23, Jody Hunter of Studio 23, east of the city. Definitely check out Jody Hunter and Studio 23. However, tonight, John, I don't know if you need an introduction. We're
Everybody
going
recognizes my
back
bald head.
we're going back to, I believe it was September 4th. I think September 4th, the second episode of the Peg City Sound Off. John was supposed to be my first guest, but then the wonderful Jade Jackson of Nashville fame decided to swoop in and take the first spot. But that's fine. We won't hold it against her. So this is John's second appearance on here, and for good reason. We got we got a new book out. So we're just gonna jump to the book, John. Um, I have my copy, of course, from Born to Be Wild to Dazed and
There it
Confused,
is.
and you know, you never shy away the signed copy, right? You can't.
Hey,
If you're gonna
buddy, you're
have the
my
book, you
friend.
gotta have it signed.
You're my friend. Of course, I'm going to sign it for you.
So yeah, the yeah, the signing at Indigo there in Sabatel Mall. Well, let's get to the book. When you were on last time, you actually talked about the idea of the book coming out, and you kind of made the announcement that there was one coming in the spring, I believe we said. And here we are. So we didn't talk too much about it, but we did touch on it. What is the significance of the year 1968? And I'm going to give you the floor. And to anyone watching, school's in session. The professor's taken over.
Pay attention now. I've always been fascinated with that year because on a musical level, it's the year that rock turned harder. And also looking at music now on the radio and looking back then, that year was the birth of classic rock. With a number of important artists and a heavier sound coming through. But the significance of that heavier sound is that it was a result of a very violent year. I mean, beginning even just in January, the end of January, the Tet Offensive, where the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, launched a massive offensive. It's the Tet, the Lunar New Year in Vietnam. So the Americans and the South Vietnamese were not expecting anything. And it was a massive attack that pushed the Americans and the South Vietnamese back as far as Saigon, and there was fighting in the suburbs of Saigon. And all this was on television. Americans are watching and thinking, and the government keeps saying, "We're going to win, we're winning, we're winning." And Walter Cronkite goes to Vietnam and the most trusted man in American news, and he reports there amongst the shelling and shots and everything, "We can't win, we have to get out." And that was a key moment because up to that point, Mr. and Mrs. Middle America, eating their TV dinner, watching the news, that they thought we were winning, and now we're not. And it was just very, very violent. It took weeks to push the North Vietnamese army back to the kind of the dividing line between North and South Vietnam. But it was a lot of lives were lost in Tet, and then the following month we had the My Lai massacre, which Lieutenant Calley and his battalion marched into this village in Vietnam and massacred everybody. Men, women, children, dogs, cats, cattle. Excuse me. And it was televised. I mean, and then they set fire to the village. It was horrible. And again, it's the same thing. Mr. and Mrs. Middle America watching the TV thinking, well, I thought we were the good guys. I thought, our boys were the good guys. Excuse me. Um, Assassination in April of Martin Luther King. Assassination in June of Bobby Kennedy, the man who was going to bring an end to the war. In between the two, violent clashes with police in London and in Paris over the Vietnam War, and not just peace marches. These were violent clashes where hundreds of policemen waded into the crowd with truncheons, and the Alexander Dubček government of Czechoslovakia, who was trying to lighten up communism, all of a sudden Russia sent in the tanks and the troops to crush what was called the Prague Spring. So all of this violence, and again, more protests, the election of Richard Nixon as president, all of this put paid to this whole notion of 1967 peace and love, and let's put flowers in gun barrels kind of thing, because that didn't accomplish anything. And what young people who kind of came of age, I guess, in '68, what they wanted was music that had a more visceral impact, that had a gut punch, that was strong, that was hard, that wasn't singing about peace and love. And it was more singing about the realities of the world that they were in at that time. And they didn't want to know about peace and love. So you had all of that hippy dippy stuff really flushed away. In February of '68, you get Vincebus Eruptum, which was Blue Cheer. Blue Cheer, and that's a very heavy album. And they released the single Summertime Blues, and it's heavy Marshall amps and everything. And the fact that that got on the hit parade and made it up like into the top 20 was a clear indication that tastes were changing and times were changing. And then the next month you get Hush from Deep Purple, a Billy Joe Royal song, which is doom, 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 really
Mm-hmm.
heavy sound. And then in April and May, Born to Be Wild is released in the first Steppenwolf album. Born to Be Wild became the song of 1968, really, and it kind of summed up the feeling of harder edge rock music. And Street Fighting Man from the Stones, Revolution from the Beatles, and the formation of Led Zeppelin and the formation of Black Sabbath that year as well. So definitely the tide was changing, but there hasn't been a book that kind of tries to piece these all together. Why was it that we got a heavier sound? Why was it that these hard rock bands, gained a foothold and eventually would come to dominate rock music as we move into '70, '71 and on? That kind of hard rock is, again, what we call today classic rock, and it's still being heard on the radio. How did these political and social events impact the music and change it from, I mean, when you look at the psychedelic scene, the flower power and the summer of love and all of that, it really didn't have a lot of longevity to it. It didn't have a lot of impact. There's nobody today saying, oh, yeah, Quicksilver Messenger Service's 17-minute long version of Fresh Air had a big influence on me. No, not really. It's a fascinating period of time, '67, and it's been overly romanticized, but it really didn't have any lasting impact. But then you look at the change in '68, and we're still feeling the impact of that sound. When you look at the important bands and the most influential bands, of course the Beatles were at the top of the heap, but next is Led Zeppelin. When you consider hard rock that came in the '70s, '80s, '90s, and onward, even after Zeppelin folded, they had a huge impact on and rock music and the sound, the style, the approach, all of it. And again, they emerged along with Black Sabbath in '68. So that's why I wanted to tie this all together. And no one had done. There'd been books about the political and social events of '68, but no one ever kind of looked at how its impact on the music of that time. And I actually taught a course when I was used to teach courses on rock music history. I taught a course on '68, and it just seemed to me that would be the basis of a book about it. And that's kind of where it came from.
Mm-hmm. It seems like such a crucial year, and you're right. It's kind of a turning point, right? Um, I obviously didn't live the '60s leading up to '68, but you really, like, to be honest with you, your book, the first chapter, it really sums it up, and you kind of talk of the Vietnam, just war and everything leading up to it, and you know maybe disobedience too, just everything. It's just
Yes,
it's
yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
You
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
find
also,
it
I
just no, go ahead.
go ahead. I the introduction to the book kind of talks about how radio changed, and
Mm,
to narrow casting to demographic groups and all that. And I talk about my experience in the '50s and '60s, but I also talk about opening for Led Zeppelin in 1970.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that, when I die, my obituary will, oh, you're author, blah, blah, blah. And he opened for Led Zeppelin. It's going to haunt me forever. But
Isn't it something?
I make that personal connection to Led Zeppelin and the impact that they had, because they had a huge impact on me. Getting to see them live, we didn't meet them, but getting to see them live is just one of those moments in my life, and certainly for the 10,000 people who were there in their lives as well, especially when they opened up with Immigrant Song, which none of us had heard yet, because that album hadn't come out. It wouldn't come out until October. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just, it was so heavy. It was a revelation.
You talk about Zeppelin. Actually, this is one of the things I was going to bring up tonight. Is Man Pop. Zeppelin goes on at 2 a.m. and that's quite a story that leads up to it with and I'm not sure the name going in there and telling them you got to get out there, you can't leave these thousands of fans hanging, but people stuck around for it. They
They
waited
did.
for it.
Well, we had when everything moved into from the outdoor, because the sound system was wrenched, and moved into the adjacent arena, and there was nothing going on in the arena. There certainly wasn't ice in it. Um, the Youngbloods, the Ides of March, who had the big hit song "I'm Your Vehicle, Baby," and Iron Butterfly all played. So we knew they were coming to play. We just didn't know about Led Zeppelin. And I suspect that Iron Butterfly probably had a rain clause in their contract that said they didn't have to play, but they came and played. So everybody was anticipating. And even after Iron Butterfly finished, we still didn't know. I mean, we were all sitting around waiting and waiting. It's narrowing in on 2 in the morning because they had been the announcement. Nobody came up and said, "Oh, sorry, folks, Led Zeppelin aren't going to play. They'd rather get stoned at the hotel." Um, Diane Hetherington, who was a local singer, and I mean, she was not a woman to trifle with, really. I mean, she had she had balls, Diane Hetherington. And I knew her and saw her playing many times. And she went to their hotel, and they were all in one room, kind of had drinking and whatever. And she gave them hell. And Herman Froome, who was with her from the merry-go-round, he said she talked to them like they were her little brothers. Like you guys have, and you can imagine rock gods like Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, kind of withering at this woman they've never heard of and never seen before, giving them hell. And so they did. They didn't have to, but they did. And I think that also makes the story so precious and just so wonderful, is that, yeah, okay, we'll come and play. And even Peter Grant said, he was their manager. He said, "We'll give you the best show we've ever given." Now, I don't know if I don't see them once, so I have no basis of comparison. A lot of people say they were just a little loose, but it was Led freaking Zeppelin playing in Winnipeg, And if they want to be a little loose, that's okay. It's Led Zeppelin.
Absolutely. Yeah. Doesn't matter really what you
It's
get,
one
but
of those things.
opening with Immigrant Song, that's Zeppelin 3 wasn't out then.
Yes, that's right. They
Zeppelin
had
3,
they
yeah.
had they played in Iceland in June of that year, and that inspired Plant and Page to write the Immigrant Song. And it's really Robert's words about they come from the land of the ice and snow. It's talking about the Vikings, but it's that guitar riff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that would be heavy metal, and certainly
Mm-hmm.
the foundations of heavy metal. That riff there. So yeah, I mean, I mean, the smell of marijuana throughout the arena was like a cumulus cloud hanging over everybody. Everybody was in good shape for Led Zeppelin to
Yeah,
come
for
on.
sure, right? One thing I on a personal note I took from the new book is anyone who really knows me knows my backstory. My dad was in a band in the, I'm gonna call it late 60s, 70s, cover band, right? They had some originals too, but they've reunited a few times since then. 2000, 2011, 2014. I think that was probably it. And when when I read the book, I was feeling this nostalgia of thinking of my dad's band. And one of the best songs they did was Vehicle from Ides of March. And that was just like, that was, for me growing up and hearing it in 2000 for sure. I didn't really know much of the older stuff, right? I was, listening to Blink 182 and whatever else, but they did so good with that one song that I actually believed it was their song. I actually had a person convinced in school my dad wrote Born to Be Wild, so that's a whole other story. But because they did that one too. But and the reason I say that is because there's so many songs from 68 that they did. Now, mind you, they were playing in 69, 70, right? So naturally you're probably gonna play some newer stuff, but it's just something that stood out when I saw that and just all the music that came out then, like their set is a lot of that stuff. So yeah, it's just as I was reading it, I just couldn't help but think of my dad's band reuniting and thinking of them playing way back when they were playing those songs, right? And how fresh they would have been at the time, right?
And that
But
song is a great song, and that song has aged gracefully. It's it's still played. You still hear it on classic rock radio. It's a great song. It's not tied to its period of time. And when they played that live, the guitar player was Jim Petterick, who also sang lead. He would go on to form the band that did Eye of the Tiger. It's the thrill of the fight. That
oh,
Rocky,
Survivor.
yeah. And he was wearing, I remember he was wearing saddle shoes, kind of like girls used to wear, black and white, and playing a gold top Les Paul, which I would later get a gold top Les Paul. Um, he was fantastic. He was just so full of energy. And there are still people today who were there who insist that Ides of March stole the show.
Hmm.
I would certainly concede that of the first three acts, they were better than Iron Butterfly or the Youngbloods. I was profoundly disappointed with the Youngbloods. But again, I go back to this, folks. It's Led Zeppelin. It's Led Zeppelin that they're playing. If they want to spend half an hour tuning, it's still Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
But Ides of March were very exciting. I was really looking forward to the Youngbloods. Big fan. Had all their albums. And I was disappointed because they had added a harmonica player sometime between the last album and their appearance at Man Pop. And God Almighty, he just wailed through every song. And it was like, shut up. It's just too much harmonica. And their set went on way too long. And I learned years later that their manager had said to them, keep playing until I get the cash. So, and he told the organizers of the event, "We're not leaving the stage until you pay us in cash, and
Wow.
in American cash too." So, I guess someone had to scramble to get the American cash, and meanwhile, the harmonica players wailing away. I like harmonica. Harmonica
Yeah.
and folk rock songs I don't like quite as much. What's cool too is public transit. The buses waited, because kids went
Yeah.
out, 3:30 in the morning, and the buses waited to take them home. I mean, salute to Transit Tom for that one.
No kidding. How did that ever come about? That whole the Man Pop. How did that come about? Was it a touring thing going through Canada or?
No, that was earlier in the summer. That was July
Okay.
1st, the Festival Express with Janis Joplin and the Grateful
Yeah.
Dead
Okay.
and all that. That was a great show. But the Man Pop 70, 1970 was Manitoba's centennial year. We were
Mm.
100 years old. So some smart people at City Hall said, well, let's hold, this is the quote I remember, let's do something for the young people, something for the kids, bring them to Shrine Circus. Um, and so they decided to have a rock concert, rock festival. And they had something in the paper about 3 months before. And it was a little form that you filled out and mailed in. And it was you listed your favorite acts that you want in kind of order of who you wanted to see, and then they would pursue these acts and book them. And Led Zeppelin and Iron Butterfly were the top two, and I guess maybe somewhere in there were the Youngbloods and the Ides of March, and Chilliwack, because Chilliwack played earlier in the day before the rain. But so it was geared to the young people. It was an act, two acts or more picked because young people wanted the show, and it's really the first and probably the only civically funded, meaning the city and the province. These levels of government funded it,
Hmm.
and they had a budget for it. And they put money out for it, and tickets were $10. You know, and
Unbelievable.
earlier in the summer when the Festival Express came through, and it was like an all day music thing. A lot of big acts on that. And as I said, Grateful Dead, Delaney and Bonnie, Mountain Band, and Janis Joplin closed the show. The tickets were $10, and there were protesters outside. Oh, rip off, capitalism! Good Lord, these huge acts for $10, pretty amazing. But then again,
Unreal.
ticket prices for normal shows were about $3 or $4 at the time. But you were getting the top acts then too. But
Yeah, that's crazy.
there were 14,000 people that attended Man Pop. Not all of them got into the arena, and that was, of course, the problem. The arena couldn't hold 14,000 people. So some people who were pretty upset that they had ticket stubs and couldn't get in. And there were others who just showed up. They were at home. Oh, the festivals have been moved in. Get in the car. We'll head to the arena, and got in. When it rained, I hung around for a while. I'd already played my set, and my girlfriend and I were just getting drenched. And I lived in Crescentwood, which wasn't that far. We go over the bridge, and so we went home to change, and came back, and that's when they'd already closed the doors of the arena because it was full, and there were hundreds of kids out front banging, and they ended up smashing the windows and the doors. And I went to a side door, and I knocked on the door, and some rent-a-cop guy opened the door, and I had my performer badge on, and I said, "I'm going to play. I'm going to play." Okay, come on. Okay, Mr. Led Zeppelin, come on in and play. So that's how I got it. Otherwise, I'd be one of those hundreds of people banging on the door out front and would have missed the event.
Wow. Crazy. That's a great story. Would you am I just safe to assume that the 60s is in your opinion the greatest era of music?
It's I used to think that of the Beatles, and the British Invasion, and then I thought that of the Byrds and folk rock because I love the Byrds and folk rock.
Mhm.
Um, and later on, singer-songwriter country rock. I love country rock. But yeah, looking at 68, it was a phenomenal year, and it was a phenomenal time because that impact carried through 68, 69, 70, 71. I mean, you look at 1971 and the Who released Who's Next, and I say in the book, you want a definition of classic rock, just listen to Won't Get Fooled Again. That's it. That's classic
Mhm.
rock right there.
Mhm. Yeah, like 100%. 100%. I've never personally I've never taken the deep dive into the Who. I know that the hits and everything, but I've never taken a deep dive into them, but that song is just so iconic. Like the scream, just everything, right? It's just it's an iconic one.
Greatest screaming rock, but also all the power chording, because power chording is
Mhm.
a part of rock. You don't have to hit all six strings. You can hit the first, heavy three strings and get more punch out of it. And
Mhm.
Townsend was a master virtually invented the power chord style, and very much in that song, and Bubba O'Reilly as well. That album. I mean, of course, Tommy was their landmark. Of course, they're going to hang their reputation on that. But for me, it's Who's Next. It's an album I never tire of. It's an album if I put on or I hear something on the radio, I got to turn it up. I mean, it's got to be loud.
Yeah.
It's got to be loud. I saw the
For
Who.
sure.
I saw the Who in London in '73. It was a Christmas show at a venue called the Sundown, and it was like a big theater thing, like film art. And they were just in tip top shape. I mean, they were doing all the songs from Who's Next and live at Leeds and some of the stuff from Tommy, but not doing the whole Tommy album. It was an
Mm.
amazing, seeing them in their prime like that.
Are you amazed that they're still going?
I,
Like they got
I'm
Zach.
amazed. I'm amazed because I think they should have shut it down. Well, okay, with Keith Moon, but they kind of carried on a little bit. John Entwistle dies. Come on, guys, it's enough.
Yeah.
Shut it down. But
I mean,
yeah,
they got Ringo's kid playing drums, right? Like Zach
but
Starkey's.
they just fired him.
Did they fight? Okay,
They
I heard
fired
they
him.
fired him, and then I heard that they're like, no, no, we're all good.
Oh, okay, okay. Well,
So I
I
don't
haven't heard
know.
that he's been brought back yet. Kind of like
Yeah,
the whole Shifley thing. Is he playing? Is he not playing? Is he playing? Is he
yeah,
not playing?
exactly, right. And we probably
I,
shouldn't
I've
speak
always,
too much on the Jets. I think they're down still right now. So
don't tell me.
no.
um, I'm the I kind of look at situations like that and say, do what Led Zeppelin did. When John Bonham died, yeah, we can get lots of people to fill it, but it's not Led Zeppelin. And I mean, it's the Who by attrition. Who's still left standing in the Who? And of course they can still play well and all of that, but I just
Hmm.
it's kind of like Paul McCartney who can't sing anymore, and that was revealed on that Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary show when he was
Oh
croaking
yeah.
what would be, and opening the show with Paul Simon, who was so out of pitch and out of whatever. I mean, it was a dreadful version of whatever Homeward Bound, I think they did.
Hmm.
Jesus Christ, you made enough money. You're no one's going to forget you. You're world renowned forever. Just stop. Just the last time McCartney was here, he played at the Investors Field. I don't know, it was a Princess Auto Field now, and I didn't go because I'd seen him before, and everybody. Well, no, I didn't go because I was flying, taking a tour to Liverpool that night. Uh,
Oh.
But yeah, everybody who says, "Oh my God, it was fantastic," and I said, "Well, what made it fantastic?" Oh, the incredible visuals, and they had a piano flying, and they had lasers and all that thing. Well, how did he sound? Oh, but they had this great stuff, and I guess my wife had taped something on the news that night, and when I got home from the tour, I listened to it, and CBC had gone and taken their cameras, and we got like 5 minutes of Paul McCartney, and there was no spectacle, and it was just him singing. It was like, oh my God, he couldn't hit the notes if someone put a gun to his head. But people go for the spectacle and think, wow, what a great show! Wow, they had lasers, without them sounding any good. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I was at that show, and you know what? It's one of those things where, for me, the first time seeing McCartney and being such a big fan of music, I look back on it that I was just kind of starstruck that I'm like, oh my God, I was seeing Paul McCartney, right? Or as some people think, not Paul McCartney. But anyway, that's a whole other story. but but that's kind of how I felt. I really don't know, looking back, I don't recall it being great performance wise, but it was more just you're there, you're seeing Paul McCartney. But I've seen a couple of clips since, and especially the Saturday Night Live one, it's just like, oh no, it's bad. So I was going to say to you next, I'm wearing a shirt right now, and I don't know how you're gonna feel about it, but I did go see. There it is.
oh,
I I did go see Mike Love's Beach Boys a few weeks back, and once again, it's one of those things where, oh, see them, but I did see them years back at Grand Beach. I think it was 2006. There was a little festival out there, and Mike Love had his Beach Boys there, and I think it's just him and Bruce Johnston
right,
that are in
yeah.
there. Bruce
Al,
goes
yeah,
back a bit
Al,
with
Al
them, but
Jardine isn't there anymore.
yeah, he's not there anymore. But it started off pretty rough. I was kind of like, at least Mike Love's still going, but it, it was pretty rough. I'm not
You know,
sure what your take is on Mike Love. I'm a big Brian Wilson fan. I think he's a complete genius with the works that he's done. But just to see them still going, and it was is a two-set show. They had a little intermission. The second half was more like Mike's son Christian plays with them, and the other guys kind of took over after that. But
hang
there's
on.
got to be a time and a place.
Can I ask you to hang on for 1 minute?
Hmm.
Okay, hang on for one minute.
All right,
Play some music.
sure. Anyone watching right now, feel free to comment in here. We're actually giving away $2. I don't know if John knows this yet. We're gonna give away $2 tonight. The books are Words and Music. This is the last book that John did, but an absolute masterpiece. If you don't want to go buy all the books, which I recommend you do buy all the books, this one kind of sums up the stories in the books. So definitely check that one out. You can get his stuff on Amazon. I'm not sure what he's coming back with, but what a wealth of knowledge this guy is. Ronnie, what do you got? Probably going to. Oh yeah, yeah, Ronnie. That's wild. And I'm sure you saw him at the BTO Disraeli Bridge thing. Also, I'm not sure what he's doing right now, but anticipating this.
Hey, sorry about that. I felt a cough spasm coming on, and I didn't want
Oh,
to do that. Yeah,
all good.
sorry about
I was just talking about your book, Words and Music. Lisa gave me a couple copies when I saw you at the record show, and the green screen doesn't really like it. But anyway, we got Words of Music, and we're actually giving away 2 books tonight. Some people who
that.
comment in, they'll go into a little raffle. We'll give away 2 books, and I was just encouraging people that, you know, go on Amazon, buy all the books. I think I got
Thank you.
4 or 5 of yours hanging up here. But the story of
Oh,
Buffalo
I
Springfield,
suspect you have more. These are just ones that are commenting.
yeah. Oh yeah, there'll be more. We were just I had Ronnie Ladderbrook. I don't know if you see it, John. There's comments coming across. Ronnie
Yes.
Ladderbrook was just talking about your Manitoba music history tour years ago that he was at, had goosebumps the whole time, and I just said you probably saw him at the Disraeli Bridge where they did the BTO
Yep.
thing. I said you were there, and Ronnie was there, and Ronnie got interviewed by the news there about it, and yeah, what a cool thing. What do you think about that? That's
Well, that was
quite
that was
something.
my initiative. I mean, I have to give credit to a guy named Greg Glatz who used to be on CJOB, and he came up to me one day and he said, "You know, we should rename that the Disraeli. We should rename it the Blackman Turner Overdrive." And I thought, what a great idea. And then he went off
Hmm.
the radio town or whatever. But I kind of ran with it for a few years, and you know, eventually with Kelly Ryback, we approached City Hall, and I was really surprised at how much they thought it was a great idea. And so they they then took it up and went with it. My thing is that we don't celebrate um, our successes. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of modesty and an inferiority complex in Canadians in general, and in Winnipeg as well. And we don't do enough of that. And you know, doing the tours, as Ronnie mentioned, and I might add that Ronnie is one of the most brilliant guitar players the city's produced. Um, he, you know, it's always amazed me at the end of the tours, people saying, "Wow, I didn't know, I didn't know this, I didn't know about that, I didn't know this." Um, and without the tours, they wouldn't know it. So why aren't we celebrating more of this? And you know, I always sort of think, well, what the hell did Benjamin Disraeli have to do with Winnipeg? So it's an overpass. We're driving over, so you know, overdrive. It
Hmm.
just makes sense. But I'm on the board of directors now at the Manitoba Historical Society, and my kind of hobby horse, my thing that I want to see happen is what you see in England. That's what they call the blue plaques. And you go to, you know, it's on the side of a building or a house or where something was located, and say, you know, former home of, you know, or Jimi Hendrix lived here from '66 to '68 kind of thing. And you know, Jimi Hendrix died in, you know, this place. It's we don't do enough to recognize the people who've come from our city, whether they were born here or not. And I want to see a plaque program, and it's probably going to be at a grassroots level. You know, looking for people to contribute once we make it public. You know, contribute money, you know, $5, $10, and get some corporate sponsorship as well,
Hmm.
and start off with 4 or 5. You know, again, my beat is music, but there are cultural people, there are writers, there are artists, all that, you know, that should get blue plaques as well. So, but it's got to start somewhere. So I think that recognizing 4 or 5 significant music people from Winnipeg is a start. And yeah, I'd love to see Grosvenor Avenue renamed Neil Young Way because he lived
I mean, sure, that's
there.
great.
But these things, I mean, it's still a Disraeli freeway. You know, there's nothing. We're not going to rewrite
Yeah,
all of that. It's just now an honorary thing. And
yeah.
same with, you know, there were ones done for Ray Saint Germain and Wayne Walker, honorary streets, you know, name. And again, those are good starts. But I think we also need to be looking further at some of the big leagues. I mean, when I was doing the tours, you had people coming from just about every state in the United States, every province in Canada, and as far away as Australia and Germany and England to take the tour. And the big attraction really was Neil Young for them. You know, to see his house in Grosvenor, to see where he first played, and, you know, where he went to school and all that sort of thing. So
Mm.
it's international, and we don't celebrate that enough. I mean, where was the first place the Beatles set foot in Canada? Winnipeg. You know, at the Winnipeg airport. That's a big deal for. I mean, they hadn't set foot anywhere else in Canada. Now, granted, they didn't play here, Just to go back to your point about Paul McCartney, when he played here in '93, I think it was, at the old football stadium, that's when I had my McCartney moment. That's when I
Mm,
had that, God, this is a real live Beatle moment. So, I can relate to that. And again, that wasn't able to go to the second time he was here. But I missed the Rolling Stones in '66. I was with my parents on holidays in Lake of the Woods when they came in July to Winnipeg. And it's the Brian Jones Stones, the original five guys
mm-hmm.
playing the old arena. And I still regret that I missed that one.
If you had, if you can go back to having your McCartney moment, who who would it be now? Who is someone that you could see now that would give you that? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this presence right now. Is there anyone?
Well, I I would say Bob Dylan when he was in his prime. I mean, I have
Mm,
seen Bob, and it was the game amongst my wife and all their friends sitting around us was, what song is that? And you listen, oh my God, that's like a Rolling Stone, because he
mm-hmm.
doesn't, he can't sing, and he doesn't do them the same way anymore. Um, I don't know who is going to get me a ticket to go buy a ticket to go see them. Um, I like the early Eagles, but when I went to see them in concert, I was tremendously disappointed. I liked early Fleetwood
Oh.
Mac, and I couldn't see them because every goonball sitting in front of me had their hand up with the phone, singing and swaying, and I couldn't see them. So my wife and I left. Um, the concert experience in a huge way doesn't really grab me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate that I saw Jeff Beck. I saw Eric Clapton, and I saw Jimmy Page. So those were three biggies for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know now who I really want to go see anymore. Who's
Yeah,
on my bucket list?
it's interesting. And you mentioned Bob Dylan, and I had I'm gonna date this one maybe maybe 18 years ago or so. We played at the Winnipeg Arena, and there was no, I don't mind if there's no banter with the crowd, that's fine. Play your music, that's great. That's what I want to hear. But he was on keyboard and he didn't say anything the whole time. And I only recognized stuck in I think there was three songs that I recognized, and off the hop I recognized, but it took a while because he has changed them, right? And then at the end he just said, I want to thank my band, and then that was the end of the show. Like, okay,
That was
cool.
that was the show I was at. That
Oh,
show.
was it? Okay.
I, I,
So
I want to
I
tell you something. I used to bring, strange as it may seem, I used to bring binoculars. Like when Clapton and Mark Knopfler were playing together here in Winnipeg, I wanted to watch first of all their frets, the neck, and I wanted to watch the expression on their faces. And are they phoning it in, or is there are they really into it? And in the case of both those guys, they were really into it. They weren't phoning it in.
mhm.
But with Dylan, what I noticed was on he had a little tweed Fender amp, okay, and on the amp was his Oscar that he had just won for sound for a movie or whatever, and it was sitting on his. Obviously, he took the Oscar with him on tour and brought it on stage and stuck it there. I thought, wow, that's kind of a weird guy. And then one of the
That
times that he came after that, which I didn't go see him, was when he had the afternoon off after the sound check, and he went in search of Neil Young sites and
mhm.
ended up at Neil Young's place on Grosvenor Avenue, and got a little tour there. They didn't know who the hell he was, but they thought he must be somebody important in the middle of winter in leather pants and studded cowboy boots.
Yeah. That's great. Um, I'm gonna throw you back. Actually, you know what? One thing I wanted to talk to you about, and like I'm telling you, the first couple chapters of the book really hooked me in, and there's a couple of comments in there. I want to talk to you about local radio. And I mean, no disrespect to Power 97, who's been great to my band, but I'm gonna kind of call it all radio here. There's no. It seems like in the '60s there was maybe radio that would play the local bands, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely, yes.
I'm a big fan of our local scene right now. This is why I do what I'm doing here, right? It's all about this local scene. I love the music coming out of Winnipeg right now. But the problem that I have is you can't hear it on radio. Like Power does they do the River City Rocks things where just example, my band goes on there, they play one of our songs, 5 minute interview, we're done. That's great. I appreciate that they got us on there, but I'll probably never hear that song on local radio again, right? And it's just something that when I read the book, it's talking about local radio playing local bands, and I thought it'd be great if someone did that in today's scene because I've said many times I would take Winnipeg and challenge any city in Canada. I do feel we have the best music scene currently. Now, maybe I don't know enough about Edmonton or Calgary or Vancouver or whatever, but I'm just so obsessed with our music scene right now. But it seems that there was something in the 60s. And then there's a radio station. I want you to maybe talk about this called the Now Flower.
Oh, geez, yes. And Alpha was the first FM rock and roll station, and it was CKY FM. And it was in the day when FM rock radio started in San Francisco, and it was Big Daddy Donahue that Tom Donahue that really created the template for all of that. And so it was an experiment in Winnipeg in about 69, that's the 69, 70, maybe even into 71. But it at the time shaped a lot of my record buying because I heard they would play in anything, as long as it wasn't crude. But there was so much different kinds of music that I was turned on to. It was the first time I heard Traffic, first time I heard
Mm.
Audience. Just two examples there. And it was wonderful to tune into. And it didn't run 24 hours. It was, at particular times of the day. But it was a revelation, and it was where you heard music you didn't hear on AM radio at all, and it was so refreshing, and it had a big impact, certainly on a lot of people, myself included, and yeah, FM radio fit for people who didn't want to hear the top 40 on AM because by that point that's what you were getting was the top 40, and it was national playlists. And Chum in Toronto had a big impact on all of that because the idea was that a kid in Halifax and a kid in Vancouver should be able to turn on the radio and hear the same 40 songs in rotation. They thought that was a great idea. I don't think so. But they like that homogeneity. And it's when that kind of came along and you had regional stations being bought up by Chum and bought up by larger radio broadcasters that you lost the regional feel and the regional taste. And, it's funny. I spent this afternoon doing an interview for a documentary film about Canadian content coming in 71 and radio before and radio after and a lot of the bands after all of that. And I talked about, in the 60s in Winnipeg, if Neil Young was played on the radio in 63 and his instrumental band, the Guess Who as Chad Allen and Reflections and the local Shondells, and they played all of this stuff on the radio and it charted in the CKY Young at Heart charts or TKRC Young at Heart charts, and there you'd find local records. But once it was the conglomerating of radio stations, you lost that regional identity, as you and I were saying just a few minutes ago, and you got this homogeneity of sound everywhere. So FM didn't have that. So FM in Winnipeg with the Now Flower was such a refreshing breath of fresh air, to use fresh again, and it shaped a lot of my listening. It shaped a lot of records that I had, been in the process of divesting myself of my huge record collection. My kids and my grandkids don't want it when I croak. So, but a lot of that stuff came from listening to that music. It also came from Andy Mellon at Autumn Stone. Andy shaped a lot of my tastes too. Walking into the store on a Saturday, early afternoon, and these giant 5 foot high tannoy speakers blasting out Budgie, with Bread Fan blasting out, and having tremendous impact. Going out and geez, okay, I'll buy Budgie. I like this stuff. It had those kind of things were outside the mainstream of radio, and I talk in the book as well about how radio now is it's narrow casting, and it's figuring out particular age groups and that sort of thing, and targeting to them and figuring, well, what do they want to hear? Well, classic rock, they want to hear Smoke on the Water and all that sort of thing. Or if it's pop, or it's hip hop, or it's country, or it's oldies, that sort of thing. You know, growing up in the late 50s to throughout the 60s, radio played all kinds of music, and you'd hear. I remember playing with my toys on the kitchen floor and the radio on in the kitchen, and hearing Al Hurt, Java Jive, and followed by Rosemary Clooney, Come On to My House, and I've been walking the floor over you by Ernest Tubb, I guess it was. It was just popular music, and that's where it was. Pop music was popular music, and you heard. And I didn't distinguish one or the other, and maybe Fats Domino would come in and play, Walking or Blueberry Hill. I didn't know that that was rock and roll. I just thought it was all the kind of music that you heard on the radio. And then
Hmm.
it just so narrowed, that there's just no adventure in radio. The only adventure coming through in radio is guys like you doing shows like this. And bringing music, like you say, like your band, putting that music on air. Now, UMFM used to do that, and they used to. I
Hmm.
know Bruce in the mornings, because I used to come on after him. He played a lot of local stuff, and did brought a lot of local guys in to do interviews and talk about their stuff. Big supporter of local music and up and coming artists and that sort of thing. And we had a studio, and they would often come in and record in that studio. It was multi-track studio at the radio station. So that was
Hmm.
something good. I don't know if he still does that, because when I left the station, I didn't really tune into it much.
Yeah, I think they do. They still do a little bit of local stuff. A couple of bands I've talked to have gone down there and done some stuff. Just one of those things, and I feel that it doesn't need its own full station, like 24 hours going local, local, local. I almost feel it needs to go back to segments. Like, give me 2 hours of local music, little banter, a little bit of music, um, little banter, a lot of music actually. But there's just so many good bands right now. Um, Two things I want to just bring up with your book quick here. And you just mentioned, when you were younger, playing on the floor with your toys and stuff in the kitchen there, and you mentioned in it that music isn't background noise to you, and how people can, oh, I'll put on some music and go do this, and even yesterday I'm in the backyard cleaning up, and I had my headphones on and I'm listening to music, and I swear, like, I was in another world, and I'm listening to an album that came out in 1996, and one that I hadn't really dove into much, and I started listening to it and listening to especially like the B side of it, and I'm listening to these songs, and it was just like, oh my God, like, why have I waited so long to listen to this? But when I it takes me back to your book too, about how it's not background noise, and I know people can, like, oh, put music on, go to sleep or whatever. I really can't do that because I get so lost in listening to everything. And I'm not a lyric guy. I don't really listen to the lyrics. I'm always listening to the music part, right? And I mean, if you got a good set of headphones and a quality, playback, you can hear some things you might not hear before. So it's just one of those things that kind of stands out, that you know, it's a real music lover thing, where it's not just background, right? I'm always
Yeah, I
listening
mean,
for there's always something.
yeah, you and I are certainly, we suffer from the same thing in that way. Music, music, music is foreground. I could never do homework to music. I could never study to music. I could never write. I mean, I'm writing a book. I mean, I'm not listening to music, because music becomes foreground. Music is always foreground to me. So I can't concentrate on anything else that I'm doing. And I've been blessed with having a really good ear, and so I could figure out songs really easily, and I also dissect songs, and it's been a real gift for me, because when I ran a rock music program at Ravenscourt for 25 years after school, I could work out all the parts, even though I can't read music. I could work out what is the cello playing. Okay, these are the notes. I can hear it in my head, and I know what it's playing. This is what this violin's doing. This is what the bass is playing. Synthesizer, all that. I can deconstruct a song in my head, and I can present it to the kids not as notes on a staff, but like C, you know, 2 bars, F, 2 bars, then drop down to a B flat for a bar. I can do all of that kind of thing because I can hear it that way. I can hear it in my head.
Hmm.
So, even though I'm much older now and I have hearing aids, um, I can still do that. And that's why I focus on songs and concentrate on songs, and that's why I hear things in songs that other people may not have picked out or isolated in their hearing. They're hearing the song. I'm hearing the song, but I'm also hearing all the constituent parts of that song, and it's a blessing. It's a curse, whatever. Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
I'm like if I was like you and I was cleaning out my garage, it wouldn't get done if I was listening to music. Yeah, because I'd be stopping all the time to listen to the music rather than sweeping the floor. My wife's always saying, "Clean that garage." Well, you have to do it without music.
It's the same as concerts. I go see concerts, and I'll just give you an example. The other night I was at the Canada Life Center, and there's a band playing, and all I was focused in on was this guitarist of this band by the name of Rival Sons. And their guitarist, he kept switching out his guitars, and I'm like, I gotta know what guitar that is. And it's a brand that I never heard of. It's like Kauer or some Kauer. And first of all, that had me. And I'm like, I've never seen these. I don't know what it is. And then he was using a slide, but it was a, I actually researched it. It's a jet slide. Never seen one before, but it's a little slide on a ring. And he'd flick his finger and it'd spin the slide around. And it's just a little slide be on the inside of their finger. And he'd kick it back with his pinky. And it would, but he could go from playing, kick it around, slide, go back, play. And all I could focus on, like, I actually don't remember what the other guys looked like because I just watched as I was mean, mind you, I'm up against the fence and I'm, facing this guy. But all I could focus on was all these little things about it. And I find that I'm very like that with concerts. I'm always focused in on what everyone's doing, and I'll focus in on like a drummer or something, and I'll watch an entire show of or song of just this guy's drum patterns, right? And it's just like you said, it's a curse, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who does this, but I go to a concert, and if I don't look like I'm having fun, I'm probably having the time of my life, just analyzing everything going on.
Are you sure you're not? Are you sure you're not my son? I mean, are you sure that I'm not your father? That's exactly how I am too. I mean, the whole idea of this thing in the ring, the finger popping up and going down, that's so cool. I mean, I used to have to go, turn around, reach to my amp, pull out the slide, and shove it on my finger, and then carry on. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's technology all catching up
It
with
was
us.
the it was the weirdest thing, and I'd never seen anyone with it. But he was kind of playing this cool riff, but on his ring there was this like thing projecting from him. I'm like, what is that? And then he used it. I'm like, oh, okay, we got a game changer here. So I researched it, and I consulted my guy at Long McQuaid, and I'm like, you ever see one of these things? And he had no clue. So like, yeah, got to figure this out. So I research. You got again from some fancy site. They do engravings and everything. I'm like, I'm not a slide player anyway, so I don't need one, but I want one. It's one of those. So,
Get it engraved with your
um,
name on it.
oh yeah, but that's how it is with musicians, right? You see something, you gotta have it. So I couldn't tell you how many times I've offloaded amps, especially amps. Not so much guitars. My wife has a good she's got a good grip on me with guitars. I'm on the one in one out system, and now everything I have is either discontinued or super rare. So I can no longer do the one in one out. So I'm just get stuck with what I got, I guess.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. I recognize that my kids don't want my record collection. They also, I mean, I have five guitars, and they're all expensive guitars and somewhat aged. But I have five grandkids. I figure, okay, I'll give each one a guitar. and they're just going to sell them. They don't care about them at all. So I don't know. I don't
Well,
know what I do about that. I mean, I'm easier at parting with records than I am parting with guitars. Sadly, I don't play as much as I used to. I've spent so many early years of my life playing, playing every night, 6 nights a week. And on Sundays, I'd have to change strings on all the guitars, because I'd have a leverage use on stage. And it's just you get into that kind of a way of life, and then I just ever since I started writing, I don't play as much, but I've been fortunate to be invited to a few things here and there where I've gotten up and been able
I
to
mean,
play.
you gotta take the White Falcon out sometimes, right?
I took it out at I took it out at the book launch at Times Change for Words of Music.
Oh,
Yeah, we had a really good Neil Young tribute band, and Neil Young, of course, plays a big part in those books, or in it
hmm,
certainly. So yeah, I brought the Falcon out. It's signed by Neil Young, in the pick of it.
yeah, it's on the pick card.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll sell
Yeah,
it to you for
I
10 grand.
perfect.
Don't tell your wife.
Should be good with it. It's all that'll be the 5 out 1 in system right there.
Well, it's an investment.
So
It's an
yeah,
investment.
you did that with Fred and his Prairie
Right.
Moon band. They're coming back. They're playing. Well, they're playing a little showcase at the Big A, which I'm involved with. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna go live because I can go mobile with this now, and I'm so
Yeah.
excited for it. But I think I'm just gonna have people sit in, tell me their best music story. But it's gonna be a couple hours, and then I believe they're playing the Park Theater in June as well. So should I
Yeah,
say that? Yeah, I'm gonna say it.
Fred had contacted me about the Park Theater gig. He wanted me to come up and do a tune or two. But I'm in Dallas Fort Worth, Texas that weekend. I'm the guest speaker at an annual fundraising thing for leukemia. It's a hospital there, and it's called like Beat Leukemia or something like that. Beat
Oh,
Leukemia.
I saw that. I saw a post about
And
that.
yeah, and I'm the big wig there speaking, and I'm also doing a signing at Barnes and Noble in Fort Worth as well. So I had to say, sorry, Fred, I'm gonna go to Fort Worth and be a
That's
star and
yeah, that's
get
too
beaten up
bad.
for being a Canadian.
Yeah. Another thing I was going to mention just about your book, something I really loved about it was literally like page 21, timeline of significant events 1967, and you go right through the whole year. And of course I looked at today and I didn't see anything for the 4th. But was it not today in like 70 with the whole CSNY Neil Young Ohio thing?
Yeah. Well, May 4th, 1970, Kent
Yeah,
State, the Kent State
there it
massacre.
is.
Open fire. 11 were hit. I think two died, and the rest were injured. Yeah. No, I had a big thing on the internet today about it.
Hmm.
That I mean, it's one of those. I mean, if you're of a certain age, it's one of those events that sticks with you. And I remember it. 1970 was a big year for me, and I did a big story on it. I'll have to rerun it on my Facebook page. And that's one of the events that stuck out for me that year was the Kent State massacre, and of course Neil Young writing Ohio, and writing it like right away, and going in the studio and having it out by what is this, May 4th? By about the third week of May, the record was out, and at radio stations everywhere. And Teach Your Children was going up the charts, and they virtually killed it because all of a sudden Ohio rocketed up the charts. But
No
I've
kidding.
always felt that Nash was the lightweight of CSN. He was a
Well,
little twee for me.
I'm sure you know from our last talk back in September, I'm a big fan of Crosby, Stills, Nash, especially Crosby. Crosby's a big part, and just with
Me
the
too.
talking
Me
about
too.
Ohio, the the thing about it is, you know, obviously I knew the song growing up. Uh, I had a big Neil Young phase, and it's always there. It's always been there. Always will be there. He his songs taught me how to play acoustic, right? But growing up, knowing Ohio, but it wasn't until David Crosby's the movie they did Why can't I think of it right now? You know which one I'm talking about, the latest one before he passed. And he talked about it. He talked about the about Kent, and uh, and that's when it really came to light of what happened to me, and or what happened to that. And you can actually see in the one photo, you see like the gun going off, and I remember him saying in the show, he says that guy said he didn't shoot, and it's like you clearly see it going off.
Yeah, that's if I could only remember my name. I think that that documentary
Yes,
that
yeah,
you talked
that's
about.
right.
There's
And I
there's
love
something
that. It's such a good movie too.
there's something that I posted today, and it's from a few years ago. It's Crosby performing at a high school in Santa Barbara, and he's performing with a band called Venice, but he's performing with the whole school band. You know, trumpets and trombones, choir, all of this, and it starts off with these kids, like it's like the marching band, but they're all playing drums, and they come marching, they come down the aisles, that kind of a rhythm, and it eventually leads into them all doing Ohio, and it's like a goosebump moment for me when they do it. It's such an incredibly powerful performance, but it's I've been looking into protest songs because this next book that I'm working on now has to do with a song that was categorized as a protest song. Protest songs do not have a long shelf life. For Dead in Ohio, you don't hear people singing that if they're protesting something because it's associated with that particular event.
Hmm.
Um, Something like Blowing in the Wind has a universality that doesn't go out of date, sadly. So it's a protest song that has lasted. But most of them don't, sadly. Most of them are from the event and done. But the
Yeah.
New York Times declared Ohio the greatest protest song of all time because of
Hmm.
its impact on bringing an eventual end to the war.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I know it's such a great song too. But yeah, recorded fast, got it out there. I did not know about that about Teacher Children. That's poor Dash. Can't get a break, eh?
You know, I I love the Deja Vu album, but I would skip over Our House. It would just make me gag. It was just so saccharine. It would break out in pimples. It was so sweet. It's just awful. Singing to Joni Mitchell. Yeah, very few in the house and a cat in the yard. Oh God, he's such a
Yeah,
light bringer. I know that
you
the
hear,
Nash fans
you
are going to
know,
come and burn a cross on my lawn tonight, but
yeah. Well, and obviously you know the story of it. With they were out shopping or whatever, and came back and wrote it. And I remember when I drove through Laurel Canyon, seeing Joni's old house, and that's the first thing that comes to mind is that just the iconic part of that, just that house and whatnot. But one last thing I want to talk to you about, and this is gonna date back to our last talk in September. We talked a lot about Laurel Canyon. I'm a big Laurel Canyon guy. I love it. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of music history is that, and I love talking about it. But you brought something up last time about a band that I never really got into, and since then have listened to them a lot, and that's the band Love. And we talked about Forever Changes. What a masterpiece! I was laying in my hammock this morning, having a coffee, and I put it on, and I don't think I moved. I just listened and listened, and I've listened to it since September, but it's one of those things that I just kind of went back to it and listened to it, and it's just so good. And then of course Spotify does this thing where when it's over, it just kind of feeds you another song, and then it started feeding me other songs from Love from different albums. Like, oh my god, this band is so good though. But what a spectacular album, and I want to thank you for pointing that out because I probably wouldn't have went down that trail with them. I've done my Buffalo Springfield, one of my favorites out of that. Crosby, Stills, Nash, with Young as well. Mamas and Papas, The Birds. The Birds is such a mega piece of my musical life in the last 6 years. Just diving back into that whole 60 sound, and I gotta credit the Echo in the Canyon documentary. That's what kind of drove me into it, and then of course going down to Laurel Canyon the couple following years, and it's a whole story you don't want to hear about. I probably told you last time, but anyway, Yeah, it's
Well,
just
I'm glad you got into Love because Forever Changes is timeless. I mean, it was created and recorded, in the midst of the Summer of Love, but there are none of the hallmarks of psychedelic Summer of Love, Peace and Love, Flower Power in it at all. No backwards guitars and hippy dippy trippy music and sitars and all that. And that's what made it timeless. Because it's not preserved in kind of in aspect that it's stuck in that period of time. It's amber too, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm glad you liked it, and I hope more people find this album because it consistently would show up on music critics' best of albums, greatest albums of all time kind of thing, because it is brilliant. And and Arthur was never able to regain that ground again, and the album kind of haunted him because he knew he could never recreate it again or move or create music like that again. I don't know if you read my book on Arthur Lee in Love. It's called Forever Changes. There's a new edition of it that's out now, and it's probably in the bookstores. It's certainly online, and it includes a foreword from Johnny Eccles, a guitar player in Love. But two thumbs up in Rolling Stone for that book. It's
yeah,
one of the it's I'm proud of all my work, but that book I'm especially proud of because I mean I have to say I loved Love from the first time I heard him on that first album, and it just seemed like such a fascinating story, and Arthur being a really enigmatic character that I feel privileged that I got the opportunity to write the definitive story of Arthur and that band, and rock and roll has very few redemptive stories. There are very few third chapters where someone gets to redeem themselves, but Arthur did. In the last 6 or 7 or 8 years of his life, when he went out and toured Forever Changes, and people and they were weeping. They never thought they'd ever hear Arthur singing those songs again. So he went. He had certainly a lot of downs in his life, but he went out. And I'm glad that I got to say that in that book.
hmm yeah. No, it's just phenomenal, and I'm glad you mentioned it in our last talk because like I said, I may not have gone down that road, um, but I'm glad I did. So
I'm,
excellent.
I'm pleased that I had some influence in that way. It makes you feel
Yeah,
good.
no, absolutely. I have not read that book yet, but I will probably grab that one next. I kind of got my John collection going on here. It's just gonna have to grow and grow and grow.
John
But
Anderson Library.
the crazy thing is, I think I've read more books uh, in the last year than I maybe have since I started school. I didn't read a lot of books in school. It was a lot of music and talking music, and I never left. Still doing the same thing. Just this time I'm reading music books. So excellent. Well, John, it's been great having you again. We beat our record of last talk. I think we were just under an hour, maybe 58 minutes. We have gone uh 1 hour and 8 minutes. That is amazing. I said to my wife, I said, we won't be as long tonight, but I damn well knew when we went live we were going the hours. But yeah, great having you on. And there's people gonna be watching this one. I urge you go get the new book. Get Words and Music. Get them all. I kind of summed up when you went away there for a sec, John, just kind of Words and Music, and I said if you're not gonna go buy all the books, at least
Yeah,
buy this one because this one kind of gives you it kind of gives you a little bit of all of it, right?
yeah,
So
and it gives you an overview of each of the books, but also the behind the scenes stuff that went on in getting a lot of these people to
mm-hmm.
and writing the book, and again all the other machinations that go involved with a book. So yeah, it's someone once called it or recently called it a memoir, and I guess it kind of is, but it's a memoir of the books
Mm-hmm.
that I've done. So it was fun for me to get all that down, and from what I understand from people, it's a fun read.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time we talk, I always take something from it, and last time when you were on here, one of the things I took from you and I thought was a great story was you getting Steven Still's autograph. And it's a fantastic story. And I actually told someone it the other day that we were talking about you, and I said that you were coming on the show, and I said, I said I always think of this story that he said about Stills, and it's just one of those things because to me, I always thought, without personally meeting these people or really knowing anything about them, I would have just assumed that Stills was the guy you'd probably be able to get an autograph from, but it took that was the last one for you, so
Yeah, he's a tough guy. He's a tough
yeah.
guy. It took
Excellent.
Crosby to get it for
Yeah,
me.
exactly, and how Crosby took a lot of shit too, right? So excellent. All right, well, good having you on again, and you know,
Well, have me on again, and I can talk about my new book because I haven't
absolutely.
gone public with it yet.
Well, this is going to be like the. I think this is going to be a thing. It's going to be special guest, and we'll have you on every time we write a book. Because I mean, we're at an hour and 10 minutes, but I don't want to keep you all night. But I could probably go another 3 hours because you're that knowledged in music, and I always, last time, this time, I've always got so excited before. So I'm like, what is he gonna say? Because I find myself, I always kind of pride myself on knowing a lot about music, and then I get you on, and I'm like, I'm just gonna let him go.
Ah,
It's so cool to have someone on here just come and talk about music because this is a great platform for a lot of local bands, and I think we do a great job. And we had guitar player night the other night. We talked about guitar gear, and there was like 8 of us or something on. We're doing night two. I'm going to do a drum night. um but there's all these special little shows we can do, but it's when you come on and talk about music history that really gets me, and looking forward to having you on again.
well, thanks, Joel. It's always a pleasure. I always look forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we'll do it again sometime, but for tonight, that's it. Quarter after 8.
Hang on.
Jets are hopefully still playing.
There we go.
There it is. I'm glad you pulled it up because my green screen hates it when I pull things in front of my face. It just disappears. But there's the book there. Go get yourself one.
It's cool. It's got the foreword is by Mars Bonfire, who wrote Born to Be Wild. And I
Excellent.
mean, he says in the foreword, I love this book.
That is the man who wrote Born to Be Wild. It was not my father that I convinced someone in high school my dad wrote that song. But there's the real writer of it. So, as I said, go out and get the book. I am going to do a raffle for the. I'm not going to call it a raffle. I'm going to do a book giveaway by the end of the night to 2 of my followers. And you know what, John? When you were on, I think I had 40 followers. I am now at 610. Um,
Wonderful.
we're clipping along. I know we're not.
I can't take all credit for that. No.
No, but we're at 610 followers now, and that's just how this thing's been growing. Um, you got your remembers page, ton of followers. I love reading up on that. That's another thing for anyone watching. Follow that page. There's a lot of music knowledge in there, and just unbelievable.
I love doing it. I will say too that on June 14th, that's where I'm back from Texas. I'll be at the Indigo bookstore in St. Vital again, signing books. So if you want to wait, get a book signed by me and pick it up. It's just the week before Father's Day, if the kind of saying a great Father's Day gift kind of thing. So that's at the Indigo on June 14th.
Perfect, June 14th. And then for everyone watching, just a little plug about the podcast. July 12th, Peg City Soundoff Music Festival happening at the Osborne Tap House. 9 local bands. We're going from 4 till 2. There's no band like Zeppelin going on at 2 a.m. That place will be shut down at 2 a.m. But if you're looking for something to do, July 12th, Peg City Soundoff Summerfest, the first one. Maybe we'll do 2 sometime. Maybe next
I hope
year.
so.
There'll be a
I
note.
hope so.
Well, hope so. And John, if you are around, Ronnie Ladderbrook is kicking off that night too. So poor guy, he had to go first. I needed a draw.
He makes it hard for the other acts to follow.
Oh, I know. That's the problem. That's the
We
problem.
don't want to follow Ronnie.
No, no, no. I feel bad for the second band. I'm not even sure which one it is. I don't know my order right now, but for all I know, it's probably my band, so that'll be great. Um, Excellent. All right, John. Well, you have a good night. We'll catch up again. I'm sure I'll see you around at some event somewhere, or maybe I'll just come get another book signed on the 14th, June 14th. Indigo. John's there. Saint Vital. Awesome. Well, good chatting with you again.
Thanks, Joel. Always a treat. Take
You
care.
bet. We'll talk to you later.